and just another person's coming in. So just want to, I'm going to mute all also, but feel free to unmute. Well, I'm going to do a presentation first. So if we can stay muted while I talk, that would be great. And then we'll open it up for questions and comments. I want to welcome everybody to this first in somebody else coming in. Just want to welcome everyone to this first in what is three-part series on books that have been published within the Jewish community and about the Jewish community in the past year or so. And I wanted to talk tonight about this book called For Such a Time as This. And I'm sorry because of my background. Let's see if I can keep it here. By Elliot Cosgrove. So there we go. Elliot Cosgrove. So I don't know Elliot Cosgrove personally. I can say that one of his daughters and my niece were classmates at the Heschel Day School in Manhattan. And that's as much of a connection that I have with Rabbi Cosgrove, as well as being colleagues within the Rabbinical Assembly, which is the organization of conservative rabbis. We also study at Hartman. He's on the current three-year program that I was on over 10 years ago. So this summer he was there, I was there, and those of you who haven't checked out Park Avenue Synagogue on YouTube to see clips, you're missing out on quite the performance. And their cantor, Ozzie Schwartz, is quite a famous cantor. And if you've seen videos before, then possibly a video popped up for you on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube just a couple of days ago of Cantor Ozzie Schwartz and the assistant cantor doing a rendition of Adon Olam to Popular from the movie and play Wicked. But it wasn't just singing Adon Olam. There was a little bit of scripted dialogue or between the two cantors before they tried to fit the song into Adon Olam. And you may have noticed that the lights above the ark during Adon Olam were green because of Wicked, and there's always several pieces of instrumental orchestra that accompanies them during the service. And I'm saying this only because it might sound like I'm cynical. I'm not. I give them a lot of credit for having the money to be able to do such a thing, to make the Shabbat service and all services that much more accessible for people. Rabbi Elliot Cosgrove's, I highly recommend his High Holiday sermons this year. I watched them after the High Holidays were over, and his sermons were quite moving. So Elliot Cosgrove is an articulate, intelligent, eloquent rabbi. Has been at Park Avenue Synagogue for quite some time now and has really revitalized the Park Avenue Synagogue and the Upper East Side community there, along with his colleague Rabbi Angela Bokdal, who's the senior rabbi of Central Synagogue, a leading Reform synagogue, just a mile away on the Upper East Side. So, that's just who Rabbi Cosgrove is. And so just to show the importance of Park Avenue Synagogue, there was a trip to Israel, I think right before COVID, that Rabbi Cosgrove led. Maybe it was for Israel's 70th anniversary. Um, they had they had 400 people from the synagogue go on a trip to Israel, that all the rabbis and other staff members of Park Avenue Synagogue led. So when you hear about a synagogue tour of Israel, you usually hear maybe a busload, maybe if it's popular or at the right time, there could be two busloads, which could be at the most 80 people. This was 400 people coming on a tour of Israel. So it's quite a testament to the work that Rabbi Cosgrove has done for his community. So I give him a lot of credit, and he's certainly a leader, not only within the conservative movement, but in American Judaism. So it's for that reason that when he writes a book, it's a book that people should read, because 10,000 people tune in for high holidays at Park Avenue Synagogue. So he's the equivalent of, I don't know, lahavdil, as they say in a Jewish phrase, to make a distinction. We shouldn't think that they're equal, what I'm about to say. So just you say lahavdil, said nobody should think that they're on the same. They should be said in the same breath, but evangelical ministers who like could take over a basketball arena on a Sunday morning and have 19,000 people in attendance. He's the Jewish equivalent of that. And that's why I said lahavdil. And he's popular for a reason. Like I said, he's intelligent and articulate, and it doesn't hurt that he's nice to look at. And I don't mean that in any negative way. I'm just saying that he has a persona. He has a public image, and the image is not just superficial. It's not just about his looks. It goes much deeper than that. There's substance to him, and it's important. It's important to hear what he has to say, and to read what he has to write. So. Last April, so 10 months ago, he wrote this book for such a time as this, and it came about as a result, of course, of October 7th, and the tremendous impact that October 7th has had, not just on Israel, but on the American Jewish community. As you know, I spoke about this over the high holidays myself, as every rabbi did around the world. But I used all of my 4 sermons to speak about it in different ways that October 7th has impacted our life. Right? So if I were to put those sermons into a book, well, I couldn't. I'm not Rabbi Cosgrove. I'm not as talented. But this is what Rabbi Cosgrove did as a result of October 7th that we're still dealing with as a Jewish community, whether in America or in Israel. The war isn't over, and as long as the hostages are still in Gaza. Today is day 439, as I have this dog tag for Bring Them Home Now. As long as the hostages are in Gaza, the war isn't over. So, the impetus for the book, and as the book starts, it begins with a personal story, and personal stories are interwoven throughout the book, from which he is writing bigger things, right? The personal leads to the bigger visionary things that he wants to write about. So he begins with what October 7th looked like in his home that morning, and the phone call that his wife received on her cell phone, and describing that, in a traditional Jewish home, a Shabbat observant home, the phone ringing on Shabbat, well, it's not surprising. The rabbi of a large synagogue, the likelihood of a phone ringing on Shabbat is pretty likely. But the fact that it kept on ringing meant that it was an unusual phone call. And so we all have our stories about how we heard about the Hamas brutal massacre and slaughter that occurred that day. So from that story, he talks mainly in this book about what the American Jewish community's relationship to Israel has been like, is like now, and might be in the future. So that's the three parts of his book: what was, what is, and what could be in the future. Okay? So I don't want to focus on the past. I've spoken about it. Most of us who are watching now or are watching the recording most likely know about the history of Israel and the history of American Jewry's relationship with Israel. And we do know also, because we are well read about news and what's going on currently within the American Jewish community, we know what is happening now with the relationship between the American Jewish community and Israel in terms of Zionism. And it's that really, I think, the book focuses on his daughter's best friend, who he names Maya. He doesn't call her by her real name, he just calls her Maya. And the discussion that came about at a dinner in a restaurant while he and his wife were visiting his daughter and his daughter's best friend when they're studying abroad. And she brings up to him at the table a question about she says, Rabbi Cosgrove, why do you have the Israeli flag on your bima? So, and then goes on to say more about this. So, the similar kind of letter would be what we're familiar with in the Washington Jewish community, which came out recently from alumni of the Charles E. Smith Jewish Day School, who wrote a letter that became public to the administration of the school, complaining about being brainwashed with a particular view of Israel and not being sensitive or empathetic at all to the Palestinian side. I'm being generous here and just saying just enough for us to be reminded of that letter. So I just bring up that letter because Maya in this book is not a unique Jewish American Jew. It is becoming more and more of a common idea of American Jews to be anti-Zionist. So I want to spend a couple moments about this idea of anti-Zionism, and then I want to also get to his idea about what should be done about this and what should be done with American Judaism in the future. So I think it's interesting that Rabbi Cosgrove makes a distinction between Zionism with a capital Z and Judaism's long inherent characteristic of being associated and connected with the land of Israel. So Zionism with a capital Z is a political movement being committed to our homeland, the land of Israel, is just an inherent religious, cultural, civilization quality of what it means to be Jewish. So it doesn't necessarily imply political movement. Okay, so he makes that distinction. I'm not sure how many other people make a distinction between the two. I certainly don't. I think actually that it is incumbent upon all Jews to be supportive of the political movement of Zionism with a capital Z. And that's just the extension of the 3,500 year connection that we've had with the land of Israel. It's just the fulfillment of that dream and of the prayers that we recite 3 times a day, etc. But he makes a distinction. And he points out that over the course of modern Jewish history, there were good Jews, Jews that nobody would ever argue are people that shouldn't be considered Jewish because of this view, good Jews who were just opposed to the political movement of Zionism for whatever reason. And it doesn't mean that they're not opposed, that they think that Judaism should rupture its connection to the concept of the land of Israel. These Jews who are anti-Zionist were not opposed to the connection to the land of Israel. They were just opposed to the politicization of that idea. Okay, so there are Jews across the spectrum, from liberal, secular to very Orthodox religious, who have been and continue to be anti-Zionist. Today, the anti-Zionists are also include these young Jews who think that Zionism is colonialism and racism. So we don't need to get into that, but he makes the argument in the book for why Zionism is not colonialism, is not racism, and he makes the argument that we shouldn't be turning these Jews away. As I've said before, there at the Hartman program in Jerusalem this summer, Yossi Klein Halevi, who is a prominent writer and pundit within the Israeli American Israeli Jewish community, born and raised in Brooklyn, made Aliyah 40 years ago, wrote for the Jerusalem Post, is an author, and just says that the American Jewish community organizationally should not allow anti-Zionist Jewish organizations to be under the umbrella of the organized Jewish community. However, the American Jewish community should welcome individuals in the Jewish community who are anti-Zionist. So Yossi Klein Halevi makes a distinction between the two. Jewish organizations that are by mission statement anti-Zionist, those Jewish organizations should not be under the umbrella of the organized Jewish community. Individuals like Maya should still be part of the Jewish community, and more importantly, reached out to, open dialogue with, and embrace and try to maintain a conversation and respectful dialogue. Now, I give Elliot Cosgrove a lot of credit when he admits that when Maya brought up her anti-Zionist concerns at dinner at a restaurant, he admits that he didn't want to engage at that time. He was first flabbergasted and then just didn't want to engage at that time. I don't know if he ended up engaging. I don't remember from the book. I know he writes several pages in the book as if he was speaking to Maya directly. And I don't know if he ended up speaking to Maya directly or not. I hope he did. But he speaks passionately about how to argue against anti-Zionism. So So I think that's an incredibly important part of the book. This dialogue with the anti-Zionist and making a statement for Zionism, and how we have the right as Jews and Israel has the right as a country to exist and to not be considered colonialist or racist. Now, in terms of the future, Cosgrove points out two things that he wants to that he focuses on in terms of a future for Israel after October 7th is done, after the war is over and ceasefire is declared, and now work can be underway to heal and begin the next chapter, saying that, and we don't need to. I mean, Elliot Cosgrove is within his right to give his own personal opinion about a two-state solution and how he thinks that that's incredibly important. I will say this. I agree with him, but what does it matter what Layman says? What does it matter what Cosgrove says? What matters is this idea that recognizing the right, recognizing that there is another people who lives in the land that is incorporated in the state of Israel, and that they have a right to self-determination, is an outgrowth of an idea that has been there from the start, from Theodor Herzl, if not before, how to deal with people who are already living there. Do you incorporate them completely into this Jewish state of Israel so that the state of Israel becomes Jewish, and maintain that other people who are not Jewish should be considered minorities or even second-class citizens? Or do you say that this new state of Israel should be completely democratic, and whoever has the majority, Arab, Jew, Christian, Muslim, should determine that, in other words, there shouldn't be any religion within the state. The state doesn't need to be a Jewish state of Israel. It's a state for all people who live in the state of Israel. So democracy is primary. So there are a variety of opinions that range between the leftist, what happens to be a leftist progressive understanding that the state of Israel should be completely democratic, to the other extreme that the state of Israel should be completely a Jewish state. What is clear, and what Cosgrove points out in his book, is that these binaries, the extremes, does society no good, because it polarizes society and forces people to take sides and forces people to think that whatever side they're on, the other side is wrong. And that has been the case with discourse in America about politics, and discourse in Israel about politics and the future. It's the nature of discourse today that discourse has become polarized to the point where the other side is wrong, and conspiracy theories are created about how wrong the other side is and how terrible it would be to even acknowledge the right of the other side to exist. So these binaries are terrible and hurtful and harmful to the future. And what he points out is how important it is for society to come to the recognition that we need to talk to one another. And so I've mentioned him before also. For somebody else that I learned with at Hartman this summer is a very charismatic teacher, Micha Goodman, who talks about these binaries, these extreme views, and that how most people in Israel are actually in the middle. So if you take the idea of Israel being a Jewish state and Israel being a democratic state, most of the population of the state of Israel recognizes that the state of Israel is both Jewish and democratic. There will be some people who think that Israel should skew to the Jewish side but still be democratic, and others who would say it should skew to the democratic side and still be Jewish, and everywhere in between. So most people recognize, Micha Goodman is pointing out, that Israel really is the bulk of the Israeli population is for the idea of a Jewish democratic or democratic Jewish state of Israel. So that idea, I think Cosgrove is talking about as well, that you can't just look at the extremes. Really, you have to be able to have at least two ideas in your head at the same time. I think he quotes F. Scott Fitzgerald, who says something like that about being able to have two ideas in your head at the same time. So that's an important point, and how difficult it is for us in society as it's being conducted today, and as we see on the news and on social media, the idea of two ideas being held at the same time is unusual, if not never. We don't see it, but we need to keep both ideas in our head at the same time, and work on the conflict that it presents, and how we're supposed to resolve that for the betterment of society, and in this case the betterment of the Jewish community. The final point I wanted to bring out, and that I want to, then we can open it up for question and comments, is this idea of the future of American Judaism today, post October 7th. And he spends a little bit of time at the end of his book to talk about what he sees is necessary for the Jewish community today to survive and to thrive into the future. So he points out on pages 192 and 193 of his book what the Jewish community needs to do. So he tells a story about what was a turning point in his life, which in his Jewish life, which happened at the University of Michigan when he was a student there. Someone that he knew at Sinai Temple in Los Angeles, where he grew up, an older member of the congregation, somebody used to sit near his father, his brother, and himself when they were going to services. Someone he was very close with had died, and he wanted to say Kaddish. So he tells the story. He's not Jewishly observant at all while he's a student at the University of Michigan. He plans to go to services for the first time at Hillel outside of the high holidays, and he goes on a Friday night, and he plans after Friday night dinner to go to a bar with his friends to drink. But somebody blocks his way and say, "Hey, what are you doing tonight? And do you have plans?" And Elliot says, yes, he does have plans that night. So the guy who's blocking the door says, well, how about next Friday night? Do you have plans next Friday night for dinner? And Elliot, being the nice guy that he is, an honest guy that he is, says, okay, I'll come to dinner next Friday night. Happened to have been the Hillel director. And from that moment on, he became Jewishly active and in the Hillel, and editor of the Jewish Student Journal, he said. He went to Israel and became a Hillel board member, led a pro-Israel group to Washington, and went to rabbinical school and got a doctorate in Jewish history, all because of the Hillel director blocking his way out and inviting him to dinner. So of the million lessons from that single exchange, Elliot Cosgrove writes on page 192, I return to two. First, the man who stood between me and the exit that day was Michael Brooks, then the Hillel director of the University of Michigan. Aside from having built a campus Hillel that was a national model, He set an example of personal leadership that remains the bar to which I continue to aspire. The ability of one person to change the life of another, of one soul to seek the spark in another, that is the tried and true means by which to secure the Jewish future. Okay, it's all about relationships, and it's all about why Chabad is as successful as they are, and that all synagogues of all denominations need to learn that lesson. It's all about relationship. And second, we must take agency in our Jewish lives. To be born Jewish is an accident of history. Given the freedoms of America, living Jewishly is a choice, an identity that can be shed without cost or consequence. The challenges of our moment are enough to prompt a Jew on the periphery to choose the easier path of disaffiliation, inertia, and apathy. In college, positive as my points of Jewish identification were, it was not an identity that traveled with me. Judaism was something I did at home. But on that otherwise nondescript Friday night, my Jewish identity was reborn and remade as an active choice to live Jewishly each and every day of my life. And I want to follow that up with a clip, a video clip. So Elliot Cosgrove has been on a book tour, and David Wolpe interviewed him, like on the stage at Temple Emmanuel, their Stryker Center for Jewish Studies, or whatever it is, for adult education, a couple weeks ago. And they were talking about his book, and I just want to share this clip, which just emphasizes what I just read. So let's, hopefully you can see this. Does everybody see this? I'm going to start playing it in a moment. Just want to make sure you see it.
And so we have to be better Jews.
That's what I was going to say.
We have to be better Jews.
Tell me about the end of your book. Actually, is a prescription for tomorrow. So.
Yeah. So what I try to do, and I actually the origins of that chapter were actually, I know you have an affiliation with Sapir. I talked about the importance of a return, right, to tradition, a sort of, if you will, a non-fundamentalist Chabad. I think that American Jews, not just Chabad Jews, right, when the history of the 20th century is written, it's not going to be the Reform, Conservative, or Orthodox movements that were the game changers. It was Chabad, this idea of having a non-judgmental, come-as-you-are access to the riches of Jewish tradition. I'm not a Chabadnik. I have no intention, because I believe in something called modernity. But that aside, this idea that we have to position the riches of tradition, ritual, literacy in a way that's accessible to the alienated Jew. And so that means, and I mark out different components of that, the head, we have to have a series of curricula. It's not creating from nothing. Such things exist. That explain the tradition, a heart. We need to have inspired leaders like Rabbi Davidson, who are able to inspire a community to be drawn to ritual. We have to have a how-to. I think that there are people who are hedge fund giants and successful attorneys and teachers and physicians who don't know how to say Kiddush at their Shabbat table, so there needs to be a no-guilt way of almost a concierge way of letting people access and learn tradition. And then the final is community. I think anything we do as Jews is a lot more fun when we're doing it. Actually, anything we do as human beings is a lot more fun when done in community.
I just want, you were here at the birth of the...
So that's what I wanted to end with, his brief idea of what's needed, and that we need to have a non-Chabad approach for the conservative movement, for Reform Jews, Reconstructionist Jews, all non-Orthodox Jews, to get back to the basics of what it means to be Jewish ritually and observance-wise. That we should, if what he says throughout his book, that American Judaism is based on the hallmark of education, but secular education, and that civic religion and a connection to Israel in a secular way, what we lose is what we have lost in that process is a connection to our roots and the foundation of who we are as Jews, which is basic observance and rituals. So he's not saying that people need to be Orthodox. He's saying that people should learn how to say Kiddush and learn how to light Shabbos candles and to be familiar with synagogue and learn Hebrew. So it's fascinating to me that that here he is teaching that's essential for the survival of the American Jewish community. So. Um, so hopefully, if you haven't read the book, that you will read the book. It's a short book. It's the size of the book is smaller than an average book. It's only about 200 pages long. You can read it maybe in two sittings, depending on how much attention one has for this, because it's not like reading a novel, but it's not like reading a college textbook either. So I highly recommend the book, and I think that what he has to say is valuable and for us to think about um, as we fashion a post October 7th American Jewish community. So any questions or comments about this? Okay then. So Marlene, do you have a question?
No, not really a question. I was just gonna say, like, yeah, basic. I mean, I think learning Hebrew opens a lot of doors, I think, in Judaism. So, like you can read a lot of text, you can say prayers, you can follow along, you can recognize words. You can go to Israel and have for the first time and recognize words. So, I think that's pretty important.
Yeah, yes, that's right. And you know what? And in terms of text, which you started that in terms of the importance of Hebrew, the website that is so important today is something called Sefaria, which is a take on the Hebrew word sifriya, which means library. So Sefaria is a free website, Sefaria, and all of classical Jewish texts from the Torah through modern times is there accessible, and most of it in English. So you have the texts in Hebrew, but most of it is with English translation. So it is Hebrew's not necessarily it's Hebrew. You don't need Hebrew in order to access Jewish text. What you need Hebrew for is like the argument in Christianity with Latin, and certainly with what it is in Islam with reading the Quran in Arabic and knowing it by heart in Arabic throughout the Muslim world, is the importance that language has for the nature of the community. And so Jews, our language is Hebrew. Even though the largest Jewish community in the world is the American Jewish community that speaks English, still the language of the Jewish people is Hebrew, and we need to teach as much Hebrew as possible so that people feel that subconscious connection to who we are as a people. Anybody else have anything else to share? Okay then, so thank you for being here this evening. I appreciate that very much. And again, I encourage everybody to look for this book or look for Elliot Cosgrove online. You'll appreciate his sermons and his teachings. And have a good night, everybody. And
Thank
happy
you.
Hanukkah next week.